Next? I need to know. What happens next?
Lindsay! Dinner!
Wait, Mom, 10 more minutes. Hi, I didn't see you there. I was just so lost on reading this book. Do you like to read? I love to read, although this wasn't always the case. A good book provides different perspectives, awakens wonder, evokes dreams, entertains, and soothes. Are you allowing this enjoyment, or are you reading as if it's a chore? Reading isn't art. There are so many diverse options to read. Perhaps you like to read poems or informational text. The point is, there are so many different options, but do you read for enjoyment? Most people don't read as much as they should. Reading teaches us how to become better people, it teaches us about history, and it helps us understand the present from a wider perspective. Do you like live theater? Lots of productions, including Hamilton, started as books. Why do people enjoy reading? When people read, they often want to be entertained. I know, you could do this by watching TV. Some, especially adults, like to be quietly entertained. Have you ever put on a show for your parents only for them to comment on your volume? They do this because they find the quiet more entertaining. When people read enthralling text, they often focus so well that they block out all background noise. The only sound they hear is the turning of pages. I normally read in my room by myself. I may be alone, but I am not lonely. The characters from my book become my friends. You may not recognize this, but you might find a commonality with a book character. Maybe you play the same sport or have the same interests that others find annoying. Someone may feel lost or not know what to do next. He or she could get insight from a fictional character or heroic figure that could inspire their hopes and their dreams. When you go to bed, do you ever dream about an imaginary place you maybe can't go to in real life? One of my favorite stories is Harry Potter. I am entertained by J.K. Rowling's work because of how well she explained Hogwarts. It made me keep wanting to read more because Hogwarts was so interesting. Now that I think about it, reading provides us with a lot of interesting things. Some read fiction to see a problem from a character's perspective, such as a bully. People get so curious about why a bully was so cruel that they might try to see the situation from the character's eyes. Reading builds perspective. It stimulates wisdom and adds knowledge. I never read for this reason, but now I understand its potential. A reader could possibly have a friend that has a certain illness or is grieving with the loss of somebody they love. Or maybe you are experiencing a feeling and you want to see our character copes with that feeling and still lives his or her life. Why do people read nonfiction? Some believe that nonfiction is boring and unimportant. I'm going to tell you this. You do not have to love nonfiction, but you have to appreciate what it's doing for this world. Nonfiction is one of the most important genres of reading. Have you ever heard of the American Civil Rights Movement? You probably have read books about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other influential African Americans. When readers read nonfiction, it is normally on a specific topic. It is important to understand how we find ourselves in our present conditions. As the novelist George Santayana once said, people who don't learn from history are bound to repeat it. My next question is, why is getting lost in a book good for you? Getting lost in a book is beneficial for humans. It expands our speech, which is good as humans. It expands our thoughts as well. We are able to have more direct conversations. Getting pulled into books helps people interact with each other, which is super important. You also develop a special bond with the character from your book, especially if you could really relate to them. You feel a certain way that you want to read more. Reading can help you change for the better. You develop new goals for yourself and change your own habits, which is good and necessary sometimes. When you lose yourself in a book, you think about it all the time. You talk about it with your friends and family, then they start reading that book. At some point, you will lose yourself in a book, and don't be afraid to do so. Books have evolved a lot. They were not always words on paper. In fact, the first book didn't even have paper. It was just pictures on cave walls. We call this a story. The cavemen did not have much things to keep them occupied, so they would draw stories on cave walls to get their imaginations going. Later on, speleologists found these drawings and made them into stories. We actually don't know what the pictures actually mean. Some of the stories we translated could not actually be what the caveman meant. The first society to use paper was the Egyptians. They sewed the papyrus plant stems together, creating scrolls. They used ink on their paper, so we are sure what they really meant. The Egyptian stories were mostly about their lifestyles. You probably read one of their stories in your modern-day history class. Before using the papyrus plant, most people would use the skin of deer and calf to write down their thoughts and ideas. One of your ancestors could have written a famous story and you didn't even know. Isn't that cool? Before I liked to read, my mom would always say this: there is nobody who does not like reading. You just haven't found the right book. Always remember, a book is magic you can take anywhere, and a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. George R.R. Martin. Now go and read.